there's a bunch of different things that happen in the systems development lifecycle. We just mentioned the left to right here from initiation all the way out to the operation and maintenance mode. There's a bunch of different things that come into play whenever you get into this software development lifecycle. And so there's a functional requirements where you sit down, maybe you try to have a meeting of the minds with the customer, but also, or the client, but also, really, like we used to say at SAIC, we bring science to solutions. So if you have, the idea of you wanted to do a certain thing, if you're like a lot of these, big shops that are out there, big government contractors or big contracting firms, the iterative approach, and we'll talk about some of these life cycles here in a second, or some of these development processes here in a second. The iterative approach could be extended for a lot of these bigger companies that are out there. So instead of meeting every day, you might meet, once a week or twice a week or something like that. And so, but what we want to do with this development lifecycle is we want to make sure that we have the requirements and how we're trying to meet those requirements, those specifications for those in a requirements traceability matrix. And so with that, typically we'll have this thing that's called control specifications, and we'll have someone there that's making sure that as we go and meet those requirements, we can go and check them off to make sure that we know where we're at in the project. As we go through, remember we're sharpening the axe right here. I talked about one of the most critical components is making sure we have a meeting of the minds with design review, and then after we've gone through and started to develop, we typically will do some sort of walkthrough with our code and maybe do some demos and have a peer or a team of peers reviewing source code and having software assurance get involved. And really it becomes quite a tedious task when you go out and actually do some of these things. I think about this, some open source tools that are out there. And if you're not familiar with them, and talking about, code review, and there's actually one that's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you the GitHub page right now. We use this one quite a bit. It's called YASCA. YASCA. And YASCA stands for Yet Another Source Code Analyzer. And so this one is open source, and it looks at a bunch of different types of source code to be able to give you a lot of audits on that source code. And you can see, it has a whole bunch of different libraries and classes. Started back in 2007. I don't think that they've done a lot since then, since they published it open source, but it still finds if you got source code that you're looking to scan for free, this is a pretty good tool. And it's called YASCA. And as you go through and actually get to a test readiness review, you can actually get in and make sure that you show those results to the customer. Yeah, I agree. Kyle, send me the link to that, what you're referring to, because I think we use that right now, but send me the link that you're referring to. And then the one that you probably, in this domain, the one that you probably will see a bunch of is maintenance, and more importantly here, change management. So change management, right? And I say that because on your exam, there's going to be 5 to 7 questions for all the domains, especially this one, talking about change management. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That's not free. Yeah, I want to just share something with you here. And this obviously won't be on your exam, but I feel like it's something that I want to say, especially when we're talking about the system development lifecycle. Usually, when you have an idea, usually the idea, if you present it to people, you're vulnerable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you right here. This is one of my favorite commercials right here. Check it out.
Ideas are scary. They come into this world ugly and messy. Ideas are frightening because they threaten what is known. They are the natural-born enemy of the way things are. Yes, ideas are scary and messy and fragile. But under the proper care, they become something beautiful.
How about that? Good for GE for making that commercial. That's awesome. Yeah, right. Who's cutting onions? Great job there. Ideas are scary. We all have them. And as soon as we bring them to life, people start throwing darts at them. And that typically will happen in the development life cycle. So how do we actually begin to develop and in an organization and keeping the project on schedule? Like, what does that look like and how do we do it? There's a few different models that are that we usually will see, and they're shown here on the screen. There's the waterfall model, the spiral model, the agile, the software capability maturity model, and typically we call that CMMI. And then there's the ideal model, right? So let's go through and talk about these. The waterfall model is I know that this is typically what a Gantt chart looks like. So you guys are probably familiar with the Gantt charts, but my pen keeps on going crazy on me here. The Gantt chart, where it kind of trickles down to the different phases within the, and each phase might actually have to be complete. But typically, this isn't used as much anymore as some of these other ones that we're going to talk about. But the waterfall is one of the first ones that was developed. The spiral looks like this right here, hot mess. But essentially, you go through different steps from just like what we saw. I'm not sure what this is right here, risk anal, but whatever. I didn't create the slide, but it just kind of goes through and iteratively continues to do risk analysis. But essentially, as you spatially diffuse all the way out, you're peppering in risk analysis into each one of those phases, and you're rapidly building prototypes. So you're building prototype, building prototype, building prototype, and it gets to the point where it starts to stabilize as it moves to the periphery. I've never actually heard it called the meta model before, but typically in, like, if you're looking into PMI and you do a little bit of research, Project Management Institute or PMP, anybody's interested in that, usually some of the history behind it shows here. Yeah, Kyle, absolutely. So this actually did lead to the ultimate, which was the agile software development. And this is typically what we see in modern implementations of fast moving software engineering implementations. And this is where you have a scrum, the idea from rugby, and where everybody gets together on a daily basis, and you go through three things. You talk about, what did you do yesterday, what are you doing today, and what obstacles did you have. And this is important for us to make sure that we have communication amongst the team, be able to collaborate in a way that's meaningful, and iteratively come up with these things that are called sprints. And the sprints typically happen every 10 to 15 days, where those you'll have a functional demonstration for the sprints every 10 to 15 days, and then you'll have another iteration and another iteration and another iteration. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. But you have continuously giving visibilities to the developers, the users, as well as the client. We actually implemented at NASA, when I was supporting the agency, we actually had it in the 16 centers where we would tag up daily. And we went through a whole Scrum training, and I don't know if you guys have been through that before, but they actually, I felt like it was an HR nightmare, because the Scrum training that we went through talked about chickens and pigs. Chickens and pigs. The chickens were, I can't make this stuff up, right? So the chickens were the kind of like the people each day that have to do the work. The chickens would peck away at the corn, actually, and actually do the work. So the chickens were all the people, and then the client was the civilian, who was the pig, and they have skin in the game. And so, that's how they implemented it there. And so anybody who were the chickens were the only ones that are allowed to talk during the actual 7-minute or 8-minute tag up. The pigs were not allowed to talk. They would always do sidebars afterwards. Yeah, sounds like an HR nightmare. But nobody ever said anything about it. So there's a lot of really cool things that you can get into. One of them, I was up in Pittsburgh 2 months ago at the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon, meeting with them about a few things that we do. And, one of the things that they developed, or were paid to develop, was this CMMI, or the CMM, capability maturity model, or the CMMI, the index of it. And so it goes from level 1 to all the way up to 5. And there will be one question on your exam for this right here. So the idea is Level 1, whatever you're creating is unpredictable. It sucks. It's poorly controlled. Mostly everything that you get reported is reactive. Level 2 gets a little bit better, but it's still reactive. We call it managed. Level 3, when I was at the Software Engineering Directorate for the Army, this is where the Army was really focusing a lot of their efforts to stay within level 3. A couple of times we were approved for a level 4, but then because the next time we got audited for this process specifically, we would go right back down because we would not have the metrics and controlling for the quantitative components that were needed to maintain a level 4. And so level 4 is super hard in large organizations. I've never heard of anyone ever making it to level 5. Level 5. It's almost like the unobtainium, right? Where you know that it's there, you're trying to get it, but for whatever reason you can't. The avatars keep getting in your way because you care about them and you can't actually obtain it. So look for one question on your exam for this. So if you're making a note card, I would definitely know CMMI, and sometimes it's called CMM as well, but either way, it's typically used interchangeably. Anybody ever done this before?
Wait, you said CMMI. What's the I stand for?
Index, I believe.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep on going. So the ideal model, I guess none of these other ones were working for whoever created this, or maybe they got a bunch of money and decided that they needed to create another project management way to do things. But you similarly to what we were just talking about, you initiate the project, you diagnose it, you establish, you act it, and then you try to analyze and learn from your mistakes. Is the way that the ideal works. And it is a pretty interesting, I've done a little bit of research on this, where you have something that is pushing a new effort. You build that idea, and then you figure out who's going to pay for it. That's always the big deal, right? Who's going to pay for it? You build the sponsorship. There's a creative way to say that. And then basically, you're going in and setting requirements, shaping the idea to the point where you can agree upon the idea, and then you're actually building the idea with the idea that now learning, you're going to test it and then release it at some point. And so that's typically how this works. I don't see this used a lot in practice.